Hey, everybody, welcome to the Flipside.
What's up?
Somebody said flippity flipside.
Flippity flipside.
This is where we get to spend time with the person who gave the message. And
that's me.
That's you. And you answer questions about what you spoke about today. So today, several notes, right? So today is volunteer celebration.
Whoop, whoop.
I'm sure you realize, those who are out there watching and attending online, that this is maybe not the norm, and it's not.
She's lying. She wears that every day to the office.
We are having an awesome volunteer appreciation prom called Lost Without You, because we would be lost without our volunteers.
Yeah, we would be.
And then you are continuing the sermon series, Is God Really...
Blank.
And today it's...
Is God really good?
Is God really good? So let's dive into some questions.
Let's do it.
Sweet. All right, number one, what do you think the main reason for our suffering is? Why does God allow it?
Yeah, so I unpacked this in the message, and I would say, my answer hasn't changed.
All right.
I would say God in his goodness gave us a choice. And so because of that choice, we allowed sin into this world. And, much like, one person, like I said in the message, one person can breathe in a virus in Wuhan, China, and 2 years later, people are still being impacted. So in that same way, sin through one choice affected all of mankind. The more interesting question, I think, is why does God allow it? Because I would love to know the answer to that question myself. Right? Like, wouldn't you?
Right.
Because I think we would both say, if we are God, we would not, we'd say, oh, I'd snap my fingers and do the easy thing.
Right.
But God hasn't done that, and I don't know why. And there are people who have attempted to answer that question, and there's some good answers out there, but I don't think any of them have been able to fully satisfy that question.
Right.
But just because we don't know the answer to that question doesn't mean, like I said, that's why in the message I tried to talk about where can we see it.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, and you know this as a parent, like you do things and you just need your kid to trust you, right? That they don't understand why it's happening, and you know why, but then you remember what it was like to be a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And to not understand, why are my parents doing this, or why is this happening? And so there are things that we can understand. Like, I don't understand why God allows it, but I trust him because of what I've seen, where I have seen his goodness show through.
That's good. And it brings me back to that one graph. Eric Sanzone, our co-lead pastor, who is currently on, he's on sabbatical right now, but the sermon series before this, he used it, I feel like in every message, but it was the four pictures, the graphic, and how sin entered the world, which I think is just this question takes me right there.
Yeah.
Of like the breakdown of our brokenness and sin. But you're right, doesn't maybe address the why does God allow it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't his ideal plan.
No, was not.
Yeah. All right, we'll go on to number two. What do I do when a friend is living one way but acts differently? She pretends she's living right, but she's hiding her true actions from others. Attempts to confront her haven't ended well, but am I called to speak truth to her as a sister in Christ?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's lots of, different ways that the Bible, not different ways, but there's lots of great roadmaps in the Bible and suggestions for how do we handle conflict. And I always come back to Matthew 18, which is how do we handle conflict. And that's, putting it simply, it says, go to the person one-on-one, then bring somebody else along. And then if it doesn't work, then you remove that person from your life. And that can look differently. Like, it's not as cut and dry. Like, I would think, you would probably agree with this, that sometimes it isn't just once that you do step one. Sometimes you do step one like 20 times, right?
Yeah.
Because we're people who give grace, and Jesus also calls us to forgive 70 times 7,
Yeah. And we're not going to get it right.
And we're not going to get it right. And we're going to come across in ways that are probably more judgmental than we realize. And so I lean into step one as often as I feel like I can. And then I've only ever had one time in all the, I'm prone to conflict, Melanie. As Melanie is my supervisor, and we've had some conflicts from time to time. That's why she's laughing.
You like to ask questions.
I like to ask questions and challenge and push and all those things.
Yeah.
And Melanie is gracious and very kind to me. But I forgot where I was even going with that.
You were saying step one.
Yeah, you go to them and you do the best that you can. Oh, one time in my life have I only ever brought in like a third party that was neutral, and never even made it to step 3. But sometimes you just realize, like, hey, there's just a boundary that I need to put up. So without, knowing the situation, it's hard to say, but I would encourage that person to lean in that process, and with prayer and with the counsel of people who know what you're dealing with. Yeah, figure out what's the best next step.
So you said their steps. Their first was
go one-on-one.
Go one-on-one.
And then as many times as you feel appropriate.
Yep.
And then bring in a neutral third party who has your back and their back.
Right.
Not somebody who's just going to support your viewpoint. And then if you need to remove that person from your life, then
you can. We actually have a staff common commitment. We have a series of staff common commitments, but we have a process in place too when we have conflict with one another, or if something were to arise, and it really follows that, which is go directly to the offender, right, and have that conversation. I would also think that it really matters on the recipient. Like, they have to be in a space to be ready to hear. And if this person is trying and has tried and sounds like going to said person, it might be too that this person just isn't ready.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The other part is we talked about resources. Like, don't just present a problem, but, what are some ways that you may support the person? So you mentioned some resources in the service, like CR, and then
go to Celebrate Recovery with them.
Go with them, right?
Take them there. Don't just challenge them, but support them, right? Do both.
That's good. Yeah. All right. Question number 3. When talking about honoring our parents, is it appropriate to keep a no contact boundary if they're emotionally unhealthy?
I would say maybe. I mean, yes, and maybe sometimes no. I always try to, this comes back to Matthew 18, and you might need to be on step 1 for like a very, very, very long time, because family is all you have, right? Like, you only get one of them, and so you want to fight to keep that as much as possible. I'll say this: I have healthy relationship with my parents. My parents are great, and there are boundaries I have with them. Yeah. Right? You have boundaries with your parents. Your parents live in the area. They go to GraceBible.Church here. They're great people. But sometimes you just need to set up boundaries. And so, again, without knowing the situation, I would say yes, that is definitely appropriate if it's, affecting you in ways that are not healthy.
Or it's unsafe.
Yeah, or it's unsafe. And maybe it's just a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, hey, I need a break. I need to come back. And see how, restoration can happen from there. Like,
we're always trying to work towards reconciliation, right? Like, that is the ultimate goal, but sometimes that isn't always possible.
Yeah.
And so, that's good. Boundaries are really important.
Yeah.
And they're hard. Boundaries are hard.
Yeah.
Because emotions get involved, and it's hard to communicate them.
Yeah.
My sister's really good at boundaries.
Nice.
Yeah.
You should have your sister up here.
Yeah. Jen, shout out. Okay. Last question. Do you have any books you can recommend for us to give to people struggling with the issue of God's goodness, especially for those who are not believers?
Yes, and I should have remembered to look it up after last service. But there's this book that some of us are reading as a staff. I'm getting the book title like 80% right. It's Journey from Pain to Love. Anguish. I think it's Anguish. Anguish is in the title. It's by Henry Nouwen, and it's these little like short daily readers. They're like maybe some are like 3 sentences, others are like maybe 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
But they are very, very insightful. And Henry Nouwen was a Catholic priest and just has a lot of great insights on pain and suffering. So he writes really well about that. William Lane Craig is an apologetics person, so maybe if you're more like intellectual, apologetics just means to give a defense of. It's a branch of like Christian theology and philosophy, and so he's great if you want to look him up. He's got tons of books, and those would be where I would start.
And you know what, Matt, I bet you can like circle back and make sure that the folks get those titles in the chat room. So follow up. We will get some information about some additional texts or books or resources that might be helpful to you on this topic.
Yeah.
Super
duper.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for being here, Prom Queen.
Crushing it. Prom Queen. Yeah. It's like we are very contrasting in our approaches to clothing today.
We are. But you look great.
Thanks. Hey, volunteers, if you are online with us, we thank you so much for all that you do to make Grace's position awesome, to be able to serve the 757, to be able to continue to support God's grace changing lives. We would be lost without you.
Lost without you.
Completely without you.
Yeah.
I mean, Zach is holding the camera right now taping us. We would have no Flipside.
We would just be talking to a wall.
Zach. It'd be weird because I don't know, it just wouldn't happen.
There'd be no Zach.
All right. Hey, thank you. Thanks for coming to the Flipside, you guys. Have a great week.